Hi everyone. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
I'm tired. I didn't watch this episode though. Okay, well you're smart.
No.
Well, here's the thing, guys. I think you all underestimate how talented you are academically, just because of the relative nature of what's going on in the school that you go to. You're all quite talented students, just not as talented as some. Stop comparing yourself to others, right? Just do the best that you can do and focus on trying to learn things for you, and don't worry about the number. And typically things go a little bit better and you tend to be quite a bit happier because you're just focused on stuff that you can control, right? So I know that's hard. You know, I'm not giving you advice that's easy to do. But those are all things that you have choices about how you want to perceive things, right? We have a lot of more control in our lives than maybe we let on if you focus on, you know, depending on what you focus on. Okay. So last time we did a bunch of solving stuff, right? And kind of define the complex numbers and operations on the complex numbers. And it was a whole lot of content that we raced through. And I think I left you guys with 2 assignments. Let's take a moment here to start and take some questions from those assignments. So I think that would be homework 5 and 6. So if we have questions from either of those, we'll start with homework 5 questions. And then we'll take some homework 6 questions. And then we'll kind of get going on with the rest of our day today. Okay with that plan? All right. So starting with homework 5. What do you guys got here? Joe? 8, you say?
Yeah.
Certainly. So notice that this, in number 8, that it's not equal to 0. So the first thing I would do is subtract 10 from both sides to make it equal to 0.
Mr. Cooley?
You can't see my screen. I just realized that, so I'll share that. Thank you. I appreciate you saying something. It wouldn't be very helpful to sit there and look at me talking while you couldn't see what I was writing. Okay so far, Joe? Okay, so what we have is a standard form polynomial that's equal to 0. The 2 appropriate methods here would be to try to solve this by factoring, or you could use the quadratic formula. Since the leading coefficient is 1, I'm going to try to factor it first, and if I can factor it, I'll solve it by factoring. If I can't, I'll use the quadratic formula. So I'm looking for 2 numbers that multiply to give me 25 and add to give me 10. 5 and 5, right? So I'll solve this by factoring since it's factorable, and it was quite easy to factor it. So when I set each of those factors equal to 0 and solve, I get -5 and -5 again. So you could list both answers, or you could just list it once. It doesn't matter. Technically speaking, we would say this is one answer for right now. In the next chapter, we'll define a new term for this sort of a situation, and we'll count it a little bit differently in a different context. But for right now, we could just count that as one solution, since you're getting the same answer twice. Okay? Natalie?
Number 9.
Okay. So I forgot to write equals 0 there, it looks like. So that, first of all, would be a problem, right? So that should have an equal 0 after it. I apologize for my typo there. And now to solve this one, again, we have a standard form quadratic that's equal to 0. We could do this by factoring, or we could use the quadratic formula here. It turns out that this one will be factorable, but to do the factoring here, you have to do like the whole long factoring method, and I'm not about that life. I'm just going to use the quadratic formula since it's available to us. Is that okay, Nat? Okay. So negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2 times a. So negative 1 plus or minus 1 squared is 1. 4 times 15 is 60, times 2 is 120, and I have a negative and a negative, so it's really plus 120. And 120 plus 1 is 121, and the square root of 121 is 11. And now if I separate this into 2 problems, a negative 1 plus 11 gives me 10 over 30, or 1 over 3. And negative 1 minus 11 over 30 gives me negative 12 over 30, or negative 2 over 5. I reduced, right? Both of them are divisible by 6. The 12 and the 30. Natalie, is that okay? Okay. Natalie again.
You also have on number 11.
Sure. So I'm going to start by getting this equal to 0 because we can't solve any standard form quadratic until it's equal to 0. So I'll just subtract the 2 over. And then again, I could try to solve this by factoring, or I could use the quadratic formula. If I look at this, the coefficients are such that the quadratic formula seems to be a much easier route to go, since I would have to do the full long factoring method on this. So x is equal to negative 15 plus or minus 15 squared minus 4 times 50 times negative 2. All over 2 times 50. Let's see. Probably going to need to get a calculator out at some point, but let's see how long I can go before I need to do that. 15 squared is 225. And then 4 times 50 is 200, times 2 more is 800. And I have negative, so I think that's plus 800. Over 100. And square root of 1025. That doesn't sound like a perfect square, but I should probably check it. I'm not sure on site whether it is or not. It's not. But let's just double check and make sure I did all the rest of that correctly before I get going too far. Oh, this should be 400, not 800. Wah, wah. So that should be the square root of 625, which is a perfect square. So that's just 25. And then I can break that up. So negative 15 plus 25 is 10. And negative 15 minus 25 is negative 40. So I have 1/10 and negative 2/5. Good thing I double checked. You happy there, Nat? Okay. Any on homework 5 still? Okay. Sure. So here we're in factored form and we're already equal to 0, so I can just set each of the 2 factors equal to 0 and solve straight away. So if I subtract the 5 and divide by 2, I get negative 5 over 2. And just add the 3, I get 3. And that's it. So not much to that one. Again, you just set the two pieces equal to 0. So divide both sides by 5 and I get 0. Add 6 to both sides and I get 6. So 0 and 6. Okay then? As an aside here, I think all of these were ones that you could do by factoring also. I used the quadratic formula in several places here, but I think they were all doable by factoring when I wrote this one. I think this was the assignment before we introduced the complex numbers in my notes. So I think these ones turned out to all be solvable by factoring if you had tried to do that. Okay, how about some questions from number 6, or homework 6, I should say. Yeah, so all we're going to be doing is foiling. So 2 times 5 is 10. 2 times negative 6i is negative 12i. 3i times 5 is 15i. And then 3i times negative 6i is negative 18i squared. I can combine the 12i or negative 12i and 15i to make 3i. And I remember that I squared is the same as negative 1. So I have 10 minus 18 times negative 1, which is the same as 10 plus 18. So I just have 28 plus 3. Is that okay?
So instead of squared, you would do negative 1 times negative.
Correct. Yep. Taylor? Sydney? Of course. Yeah.
And that's all that's as far as you go.
Yep, that's it. That's the end. Others from homework 6? Okay, well that's not a problem. We can always come back, and if you do more and have more questions later, we can always address it later. Just kind of remind me that you have some still. What we'll do next is we're going to do a timed factoring practice.
Yeah.
So we're just going to do one of them. So as a heads up here, the ones on this sheet, some of them can be done using the shortcut, but not all of them. Some of them are factorable, but not all of them. So this is a much more challenging situation, because we have some things that you have to do the full long factor method on, but some of them you can use the shortcut on. Some of them are not factorable at all, so we have to be a little bit careful on this one. But it's all still things that we can handle. If you'd like to use your graphic calculator, you're welcome to do that. Although you need not do it. Everything can be done without a calculator if you choose. But I would never deny you that on something like this. Really all you should need is something to write with, and then your calculator if you choose to use it. We'll give you 6 minutes to do this. Because this is, again, you're running into several potentially kind of trickier to handle situations than just the standard shortcut ones, right? So we'll start this here in, so we'll take 6 minutes. Those of you that are working from home, we're looking at time factoring practice 6. You should see that in the content library if you'd like to follow along. If you don't start right when we do, that's not a big deal. Just time yourself and do the best you can. Okay? Everybody ready? On your marks, get set, factor. Hi, Taylor. We're just working on one of these time factoring practices. You should have a sheet there on your spot. So you just do the best you can. Don't worry about it if you're 2 minutes behind, just for your reference. So again, it's not graded or anything, so don't worry about it if you can't finish it. It's no big deal. And obviously you can use a calculator if you need to. Okay, that's it. Time is up. Thank you, guys. Quick show of hands on completion check. At least one complete. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay. So about what you guys seems like you've been doing, more or less. Let's go through the answers here quickly. So I'll write them in. You guys can check your own. Again, there's no penalty for right or wrong answers. We're just doing the best we can, trying to get better at this skill. Yeah, that's the correct answer, what I have there. Because you have to do the long method. No, I'm quite certain that is correct. I've worked this ones out ahead of time. But if you'd like to do any of them, we can certainly do that. Does anybody need me to scroll up? Wonderful. So quick show of hands, at least one correct. At least 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. So again, we'll continue to work on this skill. This one had some tricky buggers on there, so don't be discouraged. If you feel like you didn't do as well as you were doing last time, that's okay. We'll continue to work on this. You guys will continue to get better, more accurate, and faster as the time goes on. So, no. I just went with the odds there. There's a lot more floor than there's recycling bucket.
I don't care.
So we're going to spend just a few minutes here talking about some other uses of the quadratic formula, and then we're going to do some programming with our calculator. So remember the quadratic formula. Is this part, right? So the part of our quadratic formula that we're going to be talking about today is this piece here, the b squared minus 4ac. And we call this part the discriminant. And this discriminant can tell us a couple of things about a quadratic. So the first thing we should talk about is that the discriminant can tell us the number of solutions and type of those solutions. So what do I mean by that? Well, If that discriminant is a positive number, that tells us we have two real solutions. If that discriminant equals exactly 0, that tells us we have one real solution. And if that discriminant is a negative number, that tells us we have two imaginary solutions. So for example, on the factoring practice we just did, we had x squared plus 4x plus 6. Let's assume that we have the equation x squared plus 4x plus 6 equals to 0. Easy to see that the a is 1, the b is 4, and the c is 6. So if I plug those values in for the discriminant, I get 16 minus 24, which equals negative 8. Since this is less than 0, I know that I have two imaginary solutions. I don't know what those two are, but I know they're going to be imaginary. Is everybody okay with that? So it's a quick little calculation that can tell us a little bit about what the solution set looks like. Now that's not terribly interesting because it's not a whole lot more work just to do the quadratic formula and get the answer, right? What's going to be more valuable is the second piece. So the discriminant can also tell us if a quadratic is factorable. This is something that's much more difficult to tell right away, right? So, well, let's write it this way. A quadratic is factorable if and only if the discriminant is equal to a perfect square. So what's an example of a number that's a perfect square? None, because it's 3 times 3. Is negative 9 a perfect square? No. Perfect squares must be positive numbers. Okay. What's another example of a perfect square? 25, because it's 5 squared. Everybody feel okay on that? So, for example, in the factoring practice we just did, we had one of the examples was x squared plus 9. Here are the values for a is 1, for b it's 0, and for c it's 9. If I try to do b squared minus 4ac, I get negative 36, which is not a perfect square, so I can conclude this is not factorable. And that can be considerably quicker than trying to run through and check all the pairs of numbers that multiply to give me whatever and add to give me whatever, right? Everybody's okay with that? So we have that. Okay. That's all the new stuff that I want to do today. So the remainder of our time together, we're going to spend programming our calculator to perform the quadratic formula for us. So if you have your graphing calculator with you, I'd invite you to take that out and follow along with us. If you don't have your graphing calculator with you, shame on you. You'll have to complete the programming here at home. I am recording this lesson, so you can always go back and watch the video for this. And the PowerPoint that I'm using, I have put on PowerSchool. You can find it under the Resources tab if you'd like to try to do this again on your own at home. The good part about this process is that once we've done it on our calculator, you don't need to ever have to do it again, unless for whatever reason your memory on your calculator gets cleared because like you ran out of batteries or something, or you elected to clear your memory. Okay with that? Okay. So everybody go ahead and turn your calculator on. And once you've turned your calculator on, you're going to press the program button, which if you look at the screen, I've drawn an arrow to where the program button is located on your calculator. When you press that program button, your screen should look like this. I need you to move tab over so that you're under the new tab. So use the left and right arrows to move your cursor so that the new tab is highlighted. At that point, you should see the Create New option there. Go ahead and press Enter to select that option. And you're going to be prompted to provide a name for the program. I'm going to name my program Quad. You can name it whatever you like, though. You can call it Quad, you can call it Solvinator, you can call it Rufus, you can call it Jeeves, whatever you want to call it is fine. So somebody, I think in one of my other classes, called it Dr. Phil. Apparently because he solves all their problems. I thought that was funny. So while you guys are thinking of a name and typing that in, do any of you guys watch the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire reboot, where they've restarted that game show? But you're aware that this is a game show, right? So they've been doing celebrities on it here since they've rebooted it, and Dr. Phil was one of the celebrities that was on it, and literally he took like hours to answer some of the multiple choice questions. Like they did little time lapses with the clock running about how long he was sitting there, like talking through these answers to himself. It was rather humorous. Anyways, has everybody found or picked a name and typed in a name for their program? Okay. So once you've done that, go ahead and press Enter, and it should boot you to this screen. So you have the name of your program at top and then a colon with a blank space underneath it. What we're going to do now is we're going to program our calculator to perform the quadratic formula for us. So let's talk about what this program is going to do or needs to be able to do. In order to calculate the quadratic program or quadratic formula, the calculator needs the values for A, B, and C, right? So we're going to have the calculator ask us to give it the values for A, B, and C. It's then going to use those values to perform the quadratic equation or the quadratic formula. We're going to store that result in a variable and then have the calculator display whatever the value in that variable is at the end. Everybody okay with that as a general idea? So the first thing we're going to do is just like a formatting thing to make the output look a little bit nicer, is we're going to have the calculator clear the screen whenever we run this program. So to get that to happen, we're going to press the program button again. And it should bring up a menu that looks like this. You're going to move over to the I/O tab, And from the list of commands in the IO tab, you're going to pick the clear home command and press enter. And now it should be on your screen looking like mine. Go ahead and press enter one more time to move to a new line. So you're on the line, your cursor should be below clear home. Now we're going to press the program button again, move over to the IO tab, and this time select the command prompt. And then you're going to type the letter A by pressing the alpha button and then the math button, which is right underneath the alpha button. Once you've typed in prompt A, press enter again to move to a new line and repeat that same process 2 more times, typing this time prompt B and then prompt C. I'll wait here until you guys are ready. If anybody has an issue, please let me know. I'll be happy to help. But
have you thought like the IO
program. Yep. Once you're in the program, you press the program button again, and it'll open up that menu. Yes, so once you finish prompt C, go ahead and press enter one more time to move to a fresh line. Yes, exactly. Thank you, Claire. I would have forgotten to say that, and that always causes problems. I just assume you're pressing enter at the end of a line, but that's maybe an unfair assumption on my part, because it happens every year. I think I'd get better at this after a while, but... Okay. Anybody still typing? Okay. We can wait another minute or so. So what the prompt command does is it's going to ask the user to input a value. In this case, that value is going to be stored in A, and then another one in B, and then another one in C. So it's going to ask you for a value 3 times, where we're going to input those coefficients from our problem. Okay with that? Okay. Next up, we're going to type in the quadratic formula. Now, the issue there is the quadratic formula has a plus or minus in it. The calculator doesn't have a plus or minus option. So you're going to see that what we do is we use a plus the first time, and then we're going to retype this again with a minus the second time. So you're just going to type this in exactly as it looks. So the slash is just the division symbol. And then to get this arrow at the end, you see the arrow at the end, you're going to press this STO button down at the bottom. So I have an arrow pointing to where that STO button is to get that arrow. But it needs to look, you need to have all the same symbols that I have here. So all the same number of parentheses and everything else. John? You can do it that way. If you look below the math button, there's also an x squared button that does specifically just squaring. But you could do caret 2 also. That would be fine as well. You good? Okay. Yes. There's lots of parentheses in here.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
How do you get the arrow again?
So you press the STO button down there below the, or right above the on. So the arrow is the STO button, which is right there above the on.
want us to type it with the plus?
So yeah, once you've done that, you can repeat the same process, but this time you're going to use a subtraction sign where there was a plus, and you're going to use the letter E instead of the letter D. But otherwise, it's the exact same set of symbols. Yes.
Sorry, but so it should be negative b plus, and then like for the b squared, does that stay minus, right?
That is not the negative sign. That is the subtraction symbol after the b squared. Is that what you're asking? Okay. So yes, there is a difference on your calculator between the negative symbol and the subtraction symbol. Please make sure you're using those appropriately. So we start negative b, so that should be the negative sign, but then it's b squared minus, so you need to make sure you're using the minus symbol and not the negative sign symbol. Yes, Alex.
It doesn't matter like which way you say like.
Correct. Whether you use the squared command or ℏ2 does not make a difference. Yep. Okay. Anybody still typing? Oh no. You need to make sure that you're using the delete key to do an individual character delete versus the clear key that clears like a whole line. Right next to the mode at the top. Also worth pointing out, since we're just sitting here kind of waiting for people to make sure they've got this typed in correctly, if you press second and the delete button, it gives you the ability to like insert symbols. So rather than overtype, like overwriting, which is typically the default, if you just like, oh no, I forgot a 7, you can go and do second insert and put like a 7 where you want it without overwriting whatever else was there, which is also rather helpful to know about. Okay, next up, so what we've done is the calculator is now going to ask us for values for A, B, and C. It's going to take those values and do the quadratic formula and store those values into two variables. What we need the calculator to do now is to show us what those two answers are. So what we'll do is we'll move to a new line, and then we'll press the program button again, and then we'll move over to the I/O menu, select the output option, that's option 6, and then you'll type in 6, 1, D, and then go back and get the output again and do 7, 1, E. Notice that the comma is above the number 7. So what the output parameters are there, it's saying what row should I write this answer at and what column should it start in. So row 6 is basically the second from the bottom, and it's going to start in the first pixel. So it's going to put our answer like right there at the bottom of the screen. It's just asking, where do you want me to put this answer? So that's why the 6 and the 7 are, because each row on our calculator is numbered. The first row is 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, then 6, etc. So I think 7 is the bottom row on your calculator, or at least the bottom row that you can display something on.
I didn't get this 1 and 7 1.
Right, you have to type those in yourself, just with your keyboard. Everybody types the exact same thing. So you get the output that comes from the calculator, the command output, but then you have to manually type 6, 1, D. To get the D to display, you do alpha and then the x to the negative 1 button. And then E is the alpha and then the sign button. Seemed like you guys just figured out the alphas though, right? On how to get the letters to come up. It's above the number 7. Oh my goodness. Anybody still typing? Okay, the last thing we need to do is we're going to press the program button again. And then from the CTL menu, the first menu you're in, you're going to scroll way down to the bottom till you find the stop command. And then you'll select the stop command. So your last line should just be stop. And that's the end of our program. So everybody got that in? Okay. So let's do some tests on it to make sure that our program is working correctly. So if anybody's getting a prompt or getting an error here, we can fix some of these things before we leave today. Sound good? Okay. So you guys can press second and then the mode button to exit back out to the main screen. And now let's use our program that we just wrote to solve this quadratic. Now this should be easy to see what the answer is because it's something that's easy to factor. To get your quadratic program to run, what you'll do is you'll press the program button. And then from that first menu, you're under the execute menu, EXEC. You should see the name for your program. So you'll press enter to select that. And then press enter again for it to run. Your screen should clear and it should say A equals and then your cursor. So in our case, what are we going to type in for A? 1. So you press 1 and then enter. And they'll ask you for a value for B. So you press 5 and enter. And then for C, 6 and enter. And output comes at the bottom and the answer is -2 and -3. Did anybody get something different than -2 and -3 when they ran this?
Mr. Kulik,
Yes.
I got an error.
What did the error say?
It says syntax.
Okay. So a syntax error means that you're using a symbol incorrectly. My suspicion is when you typed in your quadratic formula, you used like a minus sign or a negative sign incorrectly. So
Okay.
to look at what you did, go ahead and press the program, exit, or say quit, I should say. Press the program button, and then go to the edit tab and select the name for your program, and you can go back in and change some things. Without actually being able to look at what you've typed into your program, I can't easily tell you what the mistake is. But if we go back and we look at the PowerPoint there,
Is it -4 times A times B?
it is -4 times A times C. So you could look at the program here. My suspicion is that your syntax error is somewhere in here. But without being able to look at your calculator, it's hard for me to say exactly what the issue is. And I tried in one of the earlier classes to look at somebody's calculator during the Zoom call, and it is not. I can't see it. So
I don't see anything wrong with it.
you don't see anything wrong with it. Okay.
No.
So do this then. Go ahead and press second in mode. So you'll exit back out to the main screen. And try running the program again and doing exactly what you did last time till you get the error.
No.
Tell me once you've got the error.
What was the last?
One,
C.
1, 5, and 6 were the three numbers, the A, B, and C.
I got another error.
Okay, so there's two options, right? It says quit and go to.
Mm-hmm.
Select go to and tell me where it takes you.
Oh, it took the E wrong. It looks like.
So it went to the E on which line?
It took like an EE instead of an actual E.
Oh, I see. Yes, so that's an issue, right? So you need to make sure that it says the letter E and not the scientific notation E. That makes sense. So you think that'll work then, Sydney? Try it again once you've made that
I just got a
change.
different answer somehow.
Okay.
But it worked.
So you got an answer. What answer did it give you?
-2, -5.5.
Okay, so it tells me that my suspicion is here in your second equation, you have like a parenthesis error. Like maybe you don't have both of the parentheses at the end here or something.
Mm-hmm.
So double check that for me next. So go back into the program and double check that all the parentheses there are in the right places. That's also easy to mess up. Maddie, you said you got an error. Did you?
I think I figured it out.
You think you figured it out? Can you rerun it and make sure that you're not getting that same error anymore?
I got my answer.
That worked now, Sydney? Good.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad we got that straightened out. Okay. Maddie, how are you doing? You got it? Also to work? Good. Let's do one more. So let's do this one, everyone. So x squared plus 4x plus 6. How many of us got an error when we tried to do that? My suspicion is that probably more of you than just the 3 of you that raised your hand did. I think everybody should have gotten an error when they tried to do this. Why do you suppose what did the error say? Non-real answer. What does that mean?
It's an imaginary.
It means that it's getting an imaginary answer here. Your calculator can handle that situation. We just need to tell it to look for imaginary answers also. So let's do that. So go ahead and quit your menu or quit your error. if you still have your error screen up, go ahead and quit out of there. And then you'll press the mode button, which is right next to the second button at the top. And about midway on your screen, you're going to see the word real in all caps. Right next to the word real is A plus BI. Move your cursor so that it's on A plus BI, and then press enter to select that option. Once you've done that, you can press second and mode to exit out of that screen and try to rerun your quadratic program for this for that same problem that we just did. And you should get this result. My home crew, did you guys get that? Excellent. My class crew, did you guys get that to work? What? You didn't get that answer. So
I got 4.
instead of 2, you got 4. Okay, I know what the issue is. And the issue, Maddie, is that when you typed in your quadratic formula into your calculator, you didn't have this 2 parentheses here at the end in a row before you did the division. So if you go back into your program and add in that extra set of parentheses, or that extra parenthesis there at the end, I think that'll clean up what's going on.
After C.
Yes, so after C, there should be 2 parentheses closing. So there's 1 on that line, and then I have 1 starting the next line. If you just have 2 in a row, though, you don't need them on a separate line like I have. This is just the format of the calculator. It has only so many pixels on the screen. I think those newer ones get more pixels, or have more columns, I should say. But that, I suspect, is your issue. So if you make that fix and try rerunning it, everything should work out. What I'm giving you now is a solving practice. So all we're going to be doing on this practice is using our program that we just wrote on our calculator to find the answers for a whole bunch of these. So if you have any issues, or if there's a problem with our program, we're going to definitely find it here because we're going to do 10 of these real quick. I'm going to give this one to you anyway. You don't have to do nothing to do. You got your program with. You're welcome. Not really good.
Mine's not working. I put that in, it's not working.
So you get it open, but it's not closed. You're getting a syntax error after that, right?
Yeah.
6.
Okay, there.
Those of you that are working from home, what we're going to do is we're going to do the time solving practice 1 that you'll see in the content library on OneNote. And we're just going to use our quadratic formula that we just programmed into our calculator to do these. So all you need to do is just run your program and write down the answers, basically just checking to make sure that the program is working correctly and that you know how to use the program. Okay. But otherwise, there's nothing else to worry about, or nothing really to do here. Okay, so we'll take 5 minutes or so here to do that. You guys ready? On your marks, get set, solve. Again, if you're not using your calculator, you're doing it wrong. The whole point of this is to just practice using that program on your calculator a couple times real quick. Ooh. Ooh. Alrighty, that's been about 5 minutes, so let's pause here. If you still have things to check, that's okay. Or things to finish, that's okay. We're just going to pause and check the things that you've done already. So those of you at home, you can look at the time solving practice 1 key on the content library, or you can look at my screen while I'm displaying it for everybody in class. So just double check to make sure you're getting the same results that I was. And I'll scroll here in a moment. The answers don't necessarily have to be in the same order, right? That's not important. You just have to make sure you get the same 2 answers. I'm going to scroll down here so you can see the last couple. So the one disadvantage here of this program is that it's not going to be able to give you exact answers unless those answers are like a terminating decimal. So for example, in number 7, it can't give you 3/7. It can only give you the decimal for 3/7. So just kind of keep that in mind. Okay, so if you're taking like a multiple choice test and the answer is listed as an exact value, this program wouldn't necessarily be able to give you that exact value. Now what you could do is you could type 3/7 in your calculator and see if it matched the decimal you got from the program, but it won't itself give you that an answer formatted that way. Your guys' calculators are not capable of doing that. Or not that I figured out how to get the program to do that. I've tried several tricks to get it to do that, and I was unsuccessful with all of them. So I just used the same root program I've been using for 10 years that before they started including some of the math type options on these newer versions. Okay. Did anybody have any major issues here with their program functioning? Okay. Well, this is all we needed to do today, so we have 10 minutes left or so. You guys can relax or finish up working on these homeworks 5 and 6 if you still need to work on that. But we're going to be done today, as I promised, giving you 2 assignments last time, that I wouldn't give you any more assignments this time. So have a good weekend. I think 5 and 6 then homeworks will be the only homeworks on the homework check for Sunday. And yeah, so that's good. So everybody's got a